Imagine this. It's Christmas Day, and an Azerbaijan Airlines flight from Baku to Grozny has to make an emergency landing.
Oh, wow.
Near Atiro in Kazakhstan.
Okay.
38 people tragically died, but unbelievably, 29 others, including 2 children, survived the crash. If you enjoy these kinds of stories as much as I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Yeah, it's...
The first reports we heard mentioned a bird strike.
Right.
But when you look at how the plane was moving before it crashed, it raises a lot of questions.
Absolutely. I mean, surviving a plane crash is statistically pretty rare.
Right.
So this whole thing, it's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and the videos from people who saw it happen are chilling.
Really?
Yeah. You can see the plane struggling to stay up in the air, almost doing a figure 8.
Wow.
Before it crashes nose first and bursts into flames.
And that nose-down impact.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Right.
It seems like the front of the plane took the most damage, while the tail section, where many of the survivors were sitting, stayed mostly together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't just birds, what could have caused the pilots to lose control like that?
Right.
Mary Schiavo, a CNN transportation analyst, thinks the answer is the plane lost pitch control.
Pitch control.
Yeah.
Well, she definitely makes you think.
Yeah.
She talked about how the pilot squawked code 7700, which is a signal to air traffic control that there is a serious problem on board.
Oh, I see.
That tells us they knew something was really wrong before the crash.
Well, she also looked at the flight data. The stuff that's publicly available.
Right.
And it shows the pilot was desperately trying to regain control.
Huh.
This wasn't something sudden that they couldn't avoid. This was a fight to keep the plane in the air.
Wow.
And speaking of fighting to survive, what stands out to you about how many people survived this crash?
Well, modern aircraft design is a big factor.
Yeah.
Seats are built to withstand crazy forces, like up to 16 Gs of impact, and the materials they use are less flammable than in the past.
I remember Schiavo compared this to the Sioux City accident back in 1989.
Yeah.
Where the tail section breaking off actually helped absorb the impact, which let a lot of people survive.
Interesting.
Are there any other plane crashes with a lot of survivors that come to mind for you?
Well, the Sioux City one is definitely a good example. It shows how the physics of a crash, how the forces are spread out and absorbed, can really affect whether people live or die.
Absolutely. And David Susi, a former FAA safety inspector and CNN safety analyst, agrees with Schiavo that bird strikes probably weren't the whole story.
Okay.
He was really struck by how anyone could survive a crash like this.
Yeah.
Especially since it happened on Christmas Day.
I hadn't thought about that. It makes it even more, I don't know, more impactful somehow.
Definitely. And he just couldn't believe that birds hitting the plane could explain those weird movements it was making. It wasn't just losing power. It seemed like they were fighting to control the plane at all.
And this was an Embraer 190, a modern aircraft.
Right.
They're known for being reliable. So could there have been a bigger mechanical problem?
Yeah.
Something beyond what birds could do?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
Azerbaijan Airlines, they have a good safety record.
Right.
And they follow those EU safety standards. But this crash, it just makes you think there's more to it.
Right. Peter Goals, he's a former NTSB managing director and CNN aviation analyst. He agrees with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He pointed out that both the Embraer 190 and Azerbaijan Airlines have really solid safety records.
Right. It's important to remember,
Yeah.
one accident doesn't mean there's a pattern of problems.
Exactly. But Goals, like Sissy, didn't think birds were the whole story.
I see.
Especially because these planes can fly on one engine.
Oh, right. Right.
So he brought up the idea of an uncontained engine failure.
Uncontained.
Yeah, where pieces of the engine break off.
Right.
And could damage important systems.
Wow.
Which would explain why they lost control.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
If parts of the engine were flying around and hitting the flight controls, the pilots wouldn't have a chance.
And remember those 16G impact-resistant seats?
Yeah, yeah.
Goals said those were a big reason why people survived.
I bet.
He also mentioned the U.S. might get involved in the investigation.
Really?
Yeah, because the plane had GE engines.
Makes sense. I mean, when it comes to aviation accidents, especially when different countries are involved, it's common to work together.
Yeah.
Share what, share resources.
Yeah.
That way we can really understand what happened.
Absolutely. And there's some new information about the oxygen masks being released before the crash.
What does that tell us?
Well, Gold said it could mean that an uncontained engine failure caused a rapid depressurization of the cabin.
Makes sense. Releasing the oxygen masks would be automatic in that situation.
So we have the erratic movements,
right?
The pilot's distress signal, and now the oxygen masks.
It all points to something more than just a bird strike.
It seems like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Maybe starting with the engine failing, then losing control, and a desperate fight to survive.
It's amazing anyone made it out alive.
Investigations into plane crashes are incredibly thorough.
Right.
They look at the black box data, secure the crash site for safety, and of course, respect the victims, their families.
Of course.
But it's interesting that the Azerbaijan Prosecutor General's office started a criminal investigation right away.
That's different from what we do in the U.S.
Right here, they usually focus on the operational or mechanical stuff first.
Right.
And then look into the criminal side later if there's evidence.
It shows you how different legal systems approach things.
It's amazing how these events teach us so much about aviation safety.
Yeah.
And how countries work together.
Absolutely. And while it's important to understand the technical side of this crash, we can't forget about the human side.
Right.
Impact of this, especially on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking.
It's a reminder that behind all the data are real people with families and loved ones. Yeah, it really makes you think, even with all the technology and safety procedures, these awful things can still happen.
Yeah, and that's why these investigations are so important. It's not about blaming anyone.
Right.
It's about figuring out what went wrong and what we can do better.
It's amazing how much information can come from something like the oxygen masks being released.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like a small detail, but it could be a big clue.
Absolutely. Every little piece of information helps, from the flight data to what people saw, even something like the oxygen masks.
Right.
It all helps investigators understand what happened.
It's like a puzzle. You need all the pieces.
Exactly. And what they learn can make a real difference.
Yeah.
It can lead to changes in how planes are designed, how pilots are trained, even how air traffic control works.
So they can try to prevent these kinds of accidents in the future.
That's the goal.
It shows that aviation safety is always evolving.
Yeah.
We're always learning from what happened and trying to improve.
Absolutely. And it's a global effort.
Right.
It's not just one country.
Yeah.
Everyone's involved. Manufacturers, airlines, regulators, researchers. Everyone's working together to make flying as safe as possible.
We're all connected, even when we're up in the air.
Exactly. And while it's amazing that we can fly all over the world, we can't forget about safety.
It's the most important thing.
Every passenger deserves to get where they're going safely.
Right.
And it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that happens.
Well said. As we wrap up today, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Okay.
What do you think could make flying even safer in the future?
Good question.
New technology, better training. What do you think?
Yeah, share your ideas in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
And if you enjoyed today's deep dive,
yes,
make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Right.
And if you found this conversation helpful, give us the like. Until next time.
Bye.
Stay curious and keep those minds engaged.